Hello, and welcome to the Solving the IAM Skills Gap with CIDPRO. I'm Heather Vesson, Executive Director and President of IDPRO. And today, Kevin Strader, who is our head of our certification committee, and I will be giving an introduction and overview of the Certified Identity Professional exam. It's the exam that we here at IDPRO have spent a lot of time and resources developing in order to move forward the professionalization of our industry. Kevin, do you want to go forward one slide? I'm just going to do a few little intro slides at the beginning before handing it over to Kevin. So I always like to start with the mission of IDPRO, which is to globally foster ethics and excellence in the practice and profession of digital identity. There are a lot of digital identity communities and groups that are focused on technology or a specific type of group or something, but IDPRO is the only organization that focuses on supporting the human being, the identity practitioner who is learning and implementing and developing and solving these technology solutions. And a lot of security issues that occur in the world today, they can be solved with good identity solutions. And so IDPRO really exists to support those people, the human beings, the practitioners, the doers, the designers and developers who are creating these solutions. Next slide. We do this through 3 pillars. And the first is through our vendor neutral learning materials, which is the body of knowledge. This is freely available to anyone, whether or not you are a member. We have our certification. This is the CIDPRO certification, which we're going to go into detail today. This is basically like the certification that says, hey, this is my stamp of approval. If you think of the body of knowledge as the book knowledge, the CIDPRO exam and the certification is the proof that you have foundational knowledge in the identity space. And then last but certainly not least is our community, where our founder Ian Glazier calls this the ultimate phone a friend. If you're already a member of the community, which I think many of you already are, and you're on the Slack channel, you can see how fantastic that community is. If you've got questions, you can ask, folks will answer it. If you've got answers, people are asking questions all the time. There's lots of opportunities to share your knowledge with the community. And so those are kind of the 3 main ways that IDPRO really supports the professionalization of identity. Next slide. I think that might be it. And at this point, I will hand it over to Kevin Strader. I will say this webinar really focuses on the certification. We do also have corporate membership and individual membership. And if you're already not a member and you're interested in either of those, you can get in touch with me and I'm happy to go into more details about that. But for now, I will pass it over to you, Kevin, and let you share all the great things we've been doing for the certification.
Great, thank you very much, Heather. And great to be here with everyone. And in this session, I'm going to talk about the CIDPRO certification, what it's based on, a little bit about the development process we went through, and then how can you as a potential candidate start preparing yourself for this certification. It is a very broad certification. It is relevant to a huge range of people working in the identity industry. So I'll give you some of the background and context first. But as we get to the end, as Heather said, very happy to take any questions at all about how you prepare, what sort of questions we've got, and any way you'd like to explore in terms of helping understand what the CIDPRO certification is about. So this is what I'm going to cover. I'm chair of certification committee for IDPRO, and ForgeRock is where I spend my day job, and ForgeRock is one of the members of IDPRO, lots of other organizations. And I'd like to say that IDPRO is an organization, and the people that I worked with on creating this exam come from the whole industry. So people that are building systems, people that are running large operational systems, vendors, everybody's been involved. So it's genuinely industry wide and vendor neutral. And that's been one of our key tenets of building this exam. It should be an identity credential for everybody that is working in the identity industry. So I'm just going to introduce the CIDPRO exam, talk a little bit about who the target candidates are, the breadth of topics, and then sort of exam preparation techniques and approaches, and just a couple of testimonials at the end. So I've taken the mission of CIDPRO and adjusted it slightly to say that we have a foundational learning program. Professionalizing identity is our mission. We need to get a new way for people coming into the identity industry. A number of people like myself have been in the identity space a long time. We can't be doing this forever. We need to help bring in a lot of new talent so that both our organizations and our customers can benefit. One of the biggest gaps that was identified was there was no entry point. If you look at particularly information security, there are things like CISP. They have a little bit of a mention of identity, but they're really not built by identity practitioners. There's a whole range of specialist areas, but we felt as CIDPRO that we needed one that was a credential that was solidly about identity to help validate and support people that are identity professionals. So that's been our driving mission in creating this program. So why are we doing it now? Why is CIDPRO building this? Why have we built this? Identity is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's global, it's expanding fast. I think everyone on the call today is aware of just how much of an impact identity is having today in today's organizations. We need to have some consistent foundational knowledge around identity, and organizations are looking for talent, but it's very hard to assess identity talent. People that are able to engage with the identity domain, understand what this whole identity and access management thing is about, know what it looks like in operation. There isn't a sort of an easy way of identifying these people. And one of the things that CIDPRO can do is help set some benchmarks that will give people a guidance as to what the level of knowledge and expertise is of a candidate. So CIDPRO, as Helen's talked about at the beginning, it's a place for identity professionals to learn, share, and grow. To do this, we need to have some foundational programs. So we've launched the foundational certification program, which is the CIDPRO exam. This is about developing and fostering the ethics and excellence in the practice and profession of digital identity. It's rigorous, it's vendor neutral, and it is just focused on identity and access management. And that's one of the valuable things that CIDPRO can deliver. And it is also our intention to build on this in the future, that once we start getting momentum around the CIDPRO foundational exam, we do want to go on and build specialized certifications. Some of these will be more industry focused, some of these will be more domain focused. But this is the start of a journey for CIDPRO. This isn't just a one-off credential and that's all you'll ever see. So we have already got plans in place where we'd like to grow this program. There are certain sectors that are really important in identity, like healthcare, where it would be really valuable to have a healthcare specific certification. So that's the direction of travel we're going in. So some of the benefits of the CIDPRO certification, well, a lot of benefits for the candidates, just recognition. Recognition is so important to be able to validate your experience and expertise and get credibility. But more importantly for industry, it provides a focused development path. If you are working with identity, either as an implementer or an operations person, it provides some focus for development, provides some baseline for efficiency that helps organizations with their recruiting, and creates credibility around the whole identity space. Identity professionals are still seen as a sort of subset of general security, whereas we know we've got a lot of very specific things about identity that we are specialists in, and we want to be able to demonstrate that. We need to take a very vendor neutral and industry neutral approach because we want to create a talent pool that's available for everyone in the industry. Once you've got the CIDPRO credential, we'd like to see people being able to move and develop their career by going from one organization to another and using CIDPRO as a currency to allow them to move around the industry. And it helps us address some of the industry skills shortages, particularly around key areas like software development and implementation and security architecture. So that's a sort of general background. What I'm going to start talking about now is a little bit about who is the target candidate, and then what do we actually cover in this credential. So target candidate, this is something we had to spend quite a lot of time thinking about when we were building certification. It's designed for a digital identity professional with at least 2 years of experience of working in digital identity. So that's a really important statement. We're not wanting to certify people who have just done a basic knowledge program in identity. We want to certify people who have actually demonstrated that they understand what identity is all about, how it impacts people, some of the key issues around identity, particularly things like privacy and where your data is held are important topics. We want people to be very broad and experienced across the identity space. So to support all the things I've talked about earlier about being able to expand knowledge, validate experience, we've got to have this profile of who the individual is. So that's our target candidate, 2 years of experience working in digital identity with a range of experiences to date, who's looking to develop further skills and be able to demonstrate that they can go beyond their current working environment and take on new roles in identity. As I said earlier, the exam is sector agnostic and vendor neutral. And this is really helpful because it allows people who are looking to come into the identity domain to use CIDPRO as a currency, as a way of understanding what is identity all about. So people who want to go on and work in, say, security architecture, working on software development, identity administrators, consultants, very specialist professionals, all of these domains are places that you could go once you've obtained the CIDPRO credential. So it is aimed very much at people that want to work with identity systems, want to understand them well, want to be able to put them into practice. So the fact that we've kept it industry sector and vendor agnostic and vendor neutral allows us to become a common credential for all of people looking to get into all of these roles. Right, now down into some of the details. What does the exam cover? So Heather mentioned it earlier, the CIDPRO has a very valuable body of knowledge that has a breadth of topics covering the whole of the identity and access management domain. Workforce identity, consumer identity, all aspects of identity are covered. So what we did at the beginning of the project was to look at all of the topics that were in the body of knowledge and group them into some of the core areas that we just found absolutely fundamental to somebody working in the identity domain. So the first objective here was about explaining just what are the core functional elements of an identity solution. We need people to be just fluent in talking about IDPs, for example. So what are the components that you would expect to find when you're working with identity systems? The second objective is all about the identity itself, identifiers, life cycle, identity proofing. These are all key things for identity. It's not just about the system, it's about how you identify the individual, how you identify the system, how do you validate that? So we've got an objective very much focused on these identifiers and the identity life cycle. Objective 3 goes much more into the security aspects, and very much based on sort of, okay, when you're going to put this into practice, okay, what are some of the things you need to do to make sure this is a secure, robust identity solution? What are the key things? It's not just a case of taking the components and deploying them. You need to build it with some thought to how the solution is put together, to make it secure, to make it robust, to make it scalable. So objective 3 really starts covering those topics. Objective 4, which is my personal favorite objective, because everyone found it very difficult to write questions for objective 4, the rules and the standards that relate to identity. There's a lot of well-known ones, the NIST documents, the NIST standards around identity, but there's many others, things like GDPR, the California data protection rules. Globally, there's a lot of things we've got to think about, like sovereignty. So where's your data residing? What are the standards that are governing different jurisdictions? So all of that comes into objective 4, because you really need to think about what is it that governs the world of identity. And then objective 5 is the final one, which is what does it take to actually run a good operational identity system? When you're up and running, okay, how do you do the good practice? What are the best practice? What's the good hygiene to run an effective, efficient, secure identity system? So those are the 5 objectives. And as you can see, they're all very broad, but they're all topics that are covered in depth in the body of knowledge. And some are covered to greater depth than others. Where we haven't got as much depth, we're writing additional content at the moment. So that's the broad scope of the exam. So little bit just how we develop an exam like this. So we started with the body of knowledge, created things that I call knowledge area abstractions. What are the general domains that we are interested in? And that's how we came up with those objectives I've just talked through. That allows us to then build out the exam blueprint, and we then develop the questions to that blueprint. One of the things that comes out of doing this is we identified a whole range of things that weren't covered in the body of knowledge. So we're now writing articles to fill some of the gaps that have been identified. That will then lead to, at some point, us doing an update to the exam itself. And so we keep going around this cycle. I've included this because this is really important. Identity is a fast-moving domain. To keep current, the exam needs to keep moving forward. So we need to have a model of making sure the exam is being refreshed, being reviewed. We're including new topics as they develop so that we can keep up to date with the changes that are going on in the identity domain. And just to give you an idea of the timeline that we're running to. So this was back in 2021. It took us a large part of the year to actually build out the certification, because we needed to go and find a lot of industry experts. So the information sessions, so Kachetti and myself ran, we were finding experts around the world who were able to write good questions. We then went through a process of item writer selection, training, and then a long period of writing exam questions. All of the questions in the exam have been written by industry practitioners from a whole mixture of organizations. So 3 or 4 people came from the vendor world. We've had multiple people working from large deployments. We've had some consultants, all practitioners with many years experience in identity. And then we did a final review with another panel of item writers. So we've had a lot of industry input. We've had a lot of industry review to make sure that the questions in the exam are relevant, they're appropriate for our 2-year example candidate, and they're not trick questions. They are just practical identity related questions that somebody with 2 years experience should be happy to answer. So preparation. Preparation is something that I guess is work in progress, some of the pieces here I'm going to talk about. But here's a typical journey. We're working on the idea at the moment. There's this separate project where Heather and I are working on, which is having some licensed learning objective, but there's some foundational knowledge about identity that everyone is going to require. This foundational knowledge can either be gathered from work experience, it can be gathered from attending training courses. I know that these days CompTIA in their Security Plus program have some introductory elements of identity, but there's some foundational knowledge that's needed. What's more important for the CIDPRO exam is applied identity experience. We are looking to assess that 2 years of experience to make sure you actually have not only studied identity, but you actually know how it works in practice and some of the issues that come up when you're running an operational identity environment. Then you go through the exam preparation phase. We do have practice exams available. So we'll talk about those right at the end, but we have some practice exams available so you can test out your knowledge ahead of time. If you do well on those, then you're probably ready to go forward and take the full exam. If not, it will identify where some of the gaps are against the 4 objectives or 5 objectives I went through. And once you've done the practice exam, then you're pretty much ready to take the live exam. And if you're successful, then you'll pass the exam and get this wonderful digital credential. And you can put this badge on your LinkedIn profile and share it with everybody. This is what we mean by core knowledge. This is the type of knowledge that you need to have when you start the journey towards the CIDPRO exam. You need to have foundational knowledge in just the elements of an identity system. Things like what are identifiers? What is the identity lifecycle? What is identity proofing about? The fundamental concepts of security. And as you can see, these relate very much to the objectives of the exam, but you do need to go and spend some time reading, understanding, attending training courses to understand what are these topics. And one of the future projects for CIDPRO is to help training providers and universities and colleges create content that supports these learning objectives. And eventually we're hoping to get to this as an overall delivery system where you could actually go to a university or a college, you could go to a private training provider, study the learning program, and then work towards your exam preparation as you're spending your time working with identity systems. So at the moment, we have a lot of material in the body of knowledge. We also have some guidance materials. So we have a reference guide that tells you all of the resources that you might want to take a look at in order to be ready to take the exam. This takes you to all the relevant NIST standards, RFCs, or other resources that you might want to refer to that we've used in the development of the items in the exam itself. So the reference guide sits on the CIDPRO website. So if you go to idpro.org and go and have a look at the certification, the CIDPRO pages, you will see the list of all the guidance materials set out by objective. So this is the pathway towards taking the CIDPRO exam. So first of all, review the CIDPRO body of knowledge. It is the key resource. It is the resource that we've used for developing most of the content. And then you need to have a look at the reference guide, and where you can, once we've released them, participate in the CIDPRO foundational knowledge modules, getting that core base knowledge in place. The next stage is gaining the experience. So really taking an area or getting involved in multiple areas of identity to gain the experience as an identity practitioner, so that you can actually understand the application of that knowledge into the real world, into practical identity scenarios. And then finally, practice with the certification practice exams, use those to identify any knowledge and experience gaps that you've got, and then you should be ready to take the CIDPRO certification exam. So just a couple of examples. AWS were very early into the program. They've used it very much as an organizational approach. So they've used the CIDPRO exam as a means of doing team building, helping senior staff get more recognition, so that people that have been working with identity for some time can take the CIDPRO exam to demonstrate that, yes, they really are an identity professional with good experience. So it's a good way for seniors to get more recognition. It's also being used to help juniors learn about identity. So it's an incentive to learn. So you can go off, learn about identity, and then have CIDPRO as the goal. And you've got the practice exam particularly to help you be able to see if you're ready to take it. And it's also a really good vehicle for recruitment and retention. Having a certification that is relevant to the domain, very helpful for recruitment purposes, because it's easy to identify people that actually have a good understanding of identity. It's also really good for organizations for retention. If you've got a cadre of people that are CIDPRO certified, then it's easy to sort of build retention programs around that group. You want to incent people to become better skilled, to have more recognition. It's a great way of achieving that. Last time we did this, Romain, Chief Software Architect at SGNL, Romain made a really good quote about this. CIDPRO fills a significant gap in the professionalization of digital identity, as the importance of this essential discipline continues to increase within enterprise security. Great quote from Romain, and exactly this is what CIDPRO is all about. It's helping professionalize digital identity and make it a discipline in its own right that has recognition, and we have a credential to back it up with now. So with that, Heather, I'm going to hand back to you for a minute to talk about special offers, and then we'll go into Q&A.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kevin. Oh, let's get my camera back on. Yeah, so we wanted to give you guys some special offers. If you haven't already purchased the CIDPRO exam, we can offer you a free sample exam. Sample exams, or practice exam, sorry, the practice exam. They're normally $50. It's a taste of what the exam is. They're not the same questions, but the idea is that if you pass the practice exam, you should be in a really good place to be able to um, pass the actual exam. So if you want a free exam for that, you can go to Web Assessor. I'm sorry that you have to go to another site for this, but that's kind of the way our system is. We use a third-party criterion to run these exams. I'll put the link in the chat. You will need to create a username and password in order to create it and use it. And these offers are good until midnight Pacific time on March 31st. So that's just a little over a week. And then also, since it's March 23rd, I thought it would be really fun to offer a 23% discount on the exam. So you can use both of these. Again, you need to purchase the exam by March 31st. And then when you purchase it, you can schedule it anytime up until December 31st. And last time we kind of did this type of combo offer, someone took the practice exam. They wanted to know how confident they were to pass it before they actually bought the CIDPRO exam. So I thought that was really smart. I just recommend that if you do that, and there's time zones, make sure that you get the purchases in, like get the sample exam earlier in the week, and then make sure to get the discount for the CIDPRO exam before midnight on March 31st. So this is one of the best kind of public offers that we're going to have for the exam. If you are an CIDPRO member already, as an CIDPRO member, you get 25% discount one time with that. And so if you want to use that, you can get in touch with me. If you're not an CIDPRO member, this is a great offer. And the sample practice exam is available whether you're a member or not. So any questions or comments or concerns about taking the exam?
I was going to say, I'm just going to add one point that does come up quite often, which is the practice exam genuinely representative of the actual exam itself? I can guarantee it is. These are questions that were potential candidates for the final paper, that we develop more questions than we need for the exam. That's quite intentional. These were written by the same authors, the same level of difficulty, the same background. So it's genuinely a good assessment of how you're going to perform on the exam and covers the same breadth of topics. So the sample exam is a really good thing to have a go at, because it will give you a good assessment as to where you are in respect to the final CIDPRO exam itself. So yes, I think we've got first hand up.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Heather. This was helpful. Let me show my face. First of all, I have started going through body of knowledge, and it's excellent. Thank you for putting it all together. One question I got though while reading through it is there are a lot of references at the end of every chapter. How much it is important to really go through each of those references. I mean, there is another reference. I don't know, you called it out. There is another list of references which are recommended, but every chapter also has references. So
Yeah.
I was not.
I would say they're useful, but they're not essential. So they are references that have been used to validate the content that is in the body of knowledge article. So if you want to go and see why have we written about this in this way, here are the documents that have been referenced, the The other places that this has come from, or knowledge that we've referenced. So just like any good academic article, it's like you've got to show where your workings come from. Some that's where those references really relate to. They're not things that we've relied on for the development of the exam. What's more important is the guidance document, because when it says things that you need to go and actually go read the NIST standards, because the NIST standards on digital identity are really important to identity practitioners. You should go and read those documents. So I would say the documents we've listed in the reference guide, the reference guidance, they're the ones you should go and read, and not spend too much time looking at the references related to the body of knowledge articles.
Thanks, Kevin.
And I just popped in a link to the reference resource guide so that you could really see clearly what those documents is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one more quick question is this a practice test? Can I take it only once, or let's say if I want to take it now, see where am I stand, prepare for some time, and then take it again? Is there any way?
The practice exam you can.
Okay.
So you can retake that. You have to pay for each attempt, but while you've got a free attempt available at the moment until the end of the month, so you could take it twice before the end of the month if you want. But if you take it now, you could do it once for free, and then the next time you'll have to pay for it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Got another hand up from Jessica, and then I think we've got a couple of questions online.
Actually, one of my questions were exactly what was, and I apologize if I butcher your name here, but Santosh asked, once certified, what are fees that might be associated at renewal at the end of the year, or does it renew at the end of the year? Are there any continuing education requirements that go along with that?
Okay. Currently, no, and there is good rationale for that. That we are going to be updating the exam over time. Right now, we've just got the first release of the exam. There are other programs in the industry for general security where they have very high CPD requirements and regular annual renewals. We're not at that stage yet. We're still trying to build a body of identity practitioners, identity professionals. It sort of detracts from that if you start putting limits on it. So we're not at that stage of maturity yet. We're not at that stage of developing the program. So once certified, that's yours. There's no intentional recertification policy in place currently. I'm speaking for the certification committee at the moment. There's certainly not an intention to do that anytime soon. It sort of defeats the objective of having the credential out in the market. That's probably news to Heather, but
another question I have is, let's say that you take the exam and you fail it. What's the information around retaking the exam? Do I have to pay for the exam again? Is there a time limit on when I would need to retake that exam? What are kind of some of the details around that?
Yes, we currently have, I didn't off the top of my head, but it's on the website as well. I think it's a 2-week window before you can retake. We do have a mandatory gap before you can retake, and you would have to pay for the second attempt.
Okay.
Heather, is there anything else we need? I can't remember if we got anything else about that on the website.
I think that's it. Yes, I mean yeah, as long as you follow the mandatory gap that we've got, and yeah, you will need to pay for to take the exam again. I mean, you could use another discount code or something for that if you wanted to for that, but yeah.
Okay. I hope that answers your
Thank
question,
you.
Jessica. Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, Ritu, an online question. Where can I find the detail around the exam structure, number of questions, passing criteria? If you take a look at the idpro.org certification page, we've got a lot of detail there about the exam, the number of questions. The structure is the 5 objectives that I've talked through. But we've got the details there. The passing criteria, I think we've got the pass mark on the website as well. 66%, if I remember rightly. I should have this written down for next time.
My standard answer to that, Kevin, is it's calibrated to pass individuals with 2 or more years of practical experience. However, your certification group has and the psychometric people have figured that out. I don't know the details on that, but I trust that the psychometric analysis takes into consideration everything that needs to be considered for that.
It does. It's based on the concept of a minimally competent candidate. So the cut score, as it's called, is based on if you are a minimally competent candidate with the requirements that we've set for a 2-year candidate, a 2-year experienced candidate, then you should be able to comfortably pass the exam.
And just to tell you a little bit about the exam, I think we shifted to 100 questions. You have 2 hours to take it. You will need to take it in a secure setting, which what that means is you can either go into a test center from Criterion, and they have them all over the place, or you can download and install their secure browser on your computer. And what basically that does is it takes over your machine to make sure you're not like looking at reference materials. You've got to have your camera on. You know, they've got someone proctoring, like watching you as you're taking the test, just to make sure you're not like using reference materials or cheating or anything like that. And then you just kind of go through the questions and answering them. It doesn't tell you whether you've got them correct or a cumulative score as you go through the exam. But I think it does tell you pretty much after, pretty close after you finish the exam, whether you've passed or not. It doesn't give the specific score though. Is that all as you remember, Kevin?
Yeah. I've got some extra slides here. So yeah, it's 100 questions. It's online and proctored remotely, 2 hours, and you've got to make sure that you're in an environment that the assessment team are happy with. So these FAQs are up on the website, and this has got the detail about the reschedule as well. So all of this is available on the IDPRO website. The other part of your question, Richie, do we use adaptive testing like CISP? No, not currently. I have to say, CISP is one of the most advanced exams in the industry by a long way. They're using a lot of techniques that just relate to the volume and the global scale that exam's reached. It's not standard in particularly in the vendor space that I come from to do that, but we don't use it currently. It's obviously something that we will look at in the future. So it's fairly straightforward exam process at the moment. I think, Heather, you've answered the next question. So there is a browser extension that you need to install. It's actually a lot more lightweight than the one we've had previously. And it's very easy to uninstall, but you do need to have a system you can install a browser extension on. It's just to secure the environment so that when you're taking the test, we can be sure that you're just doing the test. But it's very lightweight in terms of the extension that's added. Okay. Any other questions? let's say there is certification alias. I used to have it on the slide. I think don't know what I've done with it. So there is, if you have any questions after this, then please email certification. There is, it's on the FAQ3 page. If you have any questions, there's an email address here, certification@idpro.org. There are also things like, if you'd like accommodations so that you can have extra time if English isn't your first language, then arrangements can be made for accommodations to support that. Any questions at all, then the certification alias will get through to the team. We'll be able to help with that. Any detailed questions, obviously will come to myself from the certification committee, and we can help answer those. But the certification team will be able to help with all the day-to-day questions. Okay, Heather, I think we've run out of questions.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you everyone for coming today to learn about the CIDPRO Certified Identity Professional Credential and exam. We look forward to you taking the exam. And if you've got any questions, please reach out to certification@idpro.org. If you're an IDPRO member and on the Slack channel, then you can always drop any questions in the #certification channel as well.